In today's video for Alpha Universe, we're going to talk about S&Q mode that can be found on a variety of Sony Alpha cameras. Let's get into it. Welcome back, everyone. My name is Miguel Quiles. S&Q mode is a feature that is found across a variety of different Sony cameras. It stands for slow and quick. And what it basically allows you to do is to shoot things like time lapses and slow motion video. And it actually captures that slow motion or that time lapse footage in camera as opposed to having to do it in post-production. We're gonna do a separate video here on Alpha Universe talking about shooting slow motion and then actually slowing it down in post. But S&Q mode gives you a really quick and easy way to do all of that in camera. Let me show you how to set it up. So we're in the camera menu for the new Alpha 1 camera. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna go down here to the shooting menu. We're gonna go over to image quality and then to S&Q settings. And here, this is where you're going to set up your slow and quick frame rate and record setting. So the first option that you have is record frame rate. And you'll have three different options. You've got 24p, 60p, and 120p. And this refers to the timeline that you're gonna be ultimately placing these videos on. For most people, if you're recording kind of a cinematic look to your videos, you're probably shooting them in 24p. If you're doing something like a news broadcast style where it has more kind of fluid motion, maybe you'll use 60p. But I would say for most people, you're gonna be shooting a recording frame rate of 24p, so we'll select that. We get a little message here, a corresponding environment is required for playback of movies. That is fine. And then we'll go over to the S&Q frame rate. So what this will do now, you'll see that there's a variety of frame rates starting at 1 frame per second and then increasing up to 120 frames per second. So what this is gonna allow you to do is actually shoot your, let's say a slow motion video at 60 or 120 frames per second. And it's actually going to play back that footage in slow motion, which is really cool. It's super useful. Let's go back into the menu here. And you have some of these other frame rates here. Typically for what I like to shoot, I would be shooting slow motion at 120 or 60. And then if you're gonna shoot time-lapse style videos where you have a lot of motion, things moving back and forth, and you wanna show the passage of time in a kind of a brief way, then you're gonna choose 1 frame per second. You have a bunch of frames in between that you can choose, but I would say the majority of people are gonna be shooting 1 frame a second for time lapse or shooting 60 or 120 frames per second to shoot slow motion. So we're gonna go back here. I'm gonna select 120 frames per second. And then you have your record setting. So here you have the ability to change your bit rates and also the color space that you're gonna be recording in. So you have 100 megabits a second, 50 or 30 in either 420 color or 422. And all of these are all 10 bits. So you're gonna get really good high quality files that are gonna come out from shooting an S&Q. I'm gonna pick the highest one because I do have an SD card in here that will support that. You do have to make sure that you have the right SD card in order for you to be able to capture those frame rates. If for some reason you have an SD card that's not compatible, you will get a warning on your screen that will tell you, make sure that you're using the appropriate media, because 422 10-bit is, there's a lot of data, right? Really high quality. We're gonna go ahead and we're gonna select 100 megabits, 422 10-bit, and we are all set up to be able to shoot a 120 frames per second on a 24p timeline. All right, so we're gonna take a couple of little test shots here. I wanna show you what each mode, what the results of each one will be. But before that, a really important thing that you need to make sure that you do, we're gonna hit the function button on the back of the camera. And you're gonna see in the bottom right corner, you should see S&Q exposure mode. This is also in your camera menu as well, but it is also in your function menu. We'll select S&Q, and I believe by default on most cameras out of the box, it's set to program auto. If it is, it's not gonna allow you to set up your shutter speed and your aperture to whatever it is that you want it to be. So I would recommend choosing manual exposure because that will allow you to adjust your shutter speed and your aperture in order to get the right exposure and kind of tweak it to your own taste. Generally speaking, if you're shooting at 120 frames per second, you want your shutter speed to be double whatever that frame rate is going to be. So in this case, you would set your shutter speed to 1/250th of a second. That's the closest you can get to doubling your shutter speed based on that 120 frames per second frame rate. And anyway, with that being said, let's go ahead, let's shoot some 1 frame per second, 60 frames per second, and 120 frame per second video, and let's see what it looks like. So it's pretty awesome, really easy for you to be able to shoot those time lapses and those slow motion videos and actually get to play them back on your camera to make sure that it came out exactly the way that you wanted it to come out. Now there is a way for you to be able to shoot 60 frames and 120 frames per second in the camera and actually do it in post-production. It does give you a little bit more flexibility where you have the ability to slow down or speed up that footage. We'll talk about that in an additional video here on Alpha Universe. So make sure, if you haven't already done so, subscribe to this channel because we have new videos releasing every single week. Now, if you want to go deeper into the Alpha Universe, make sure that you click on one of the videos that you see here on the screen. I'll see you there.